Let's get started on today.
The clock is ticking, and not one that President Trump can control. First of all, let me show you something that was on Truth Social here just literally minutes ago. President Trump on Truth Social posted a couple things this morning. So it's important to show what he did, where his mind is. This is literally 41 minutes ago. First of all, he posted this exclusive. Israel's foreign minister praises Trump. Remarkable leadership. So again, we see this whole pattern is where he gets a lot of praise from the Israeli leaders, and he loves it. He fawns over.
Yeah, it's a little tone deaf on Trump's part, where he's being accused of being Israeli puppet, and then he posts about how happy he is that Israel is praising him. It's not. You think Trump might be losing some of his political sense
over that stuff, and he just feeds on it. So he's asked that. So that's the first thing he posted. Then right underneath that, we see Mark Levin. And this is something he posted right up. This is from Mark Levin last night. And you got to wonder, okay, well, first he praises Israel, or he accepts the praise from Israel. And then he goes into one of Israel's biggest voice boxes in the United States, Mark Levin, who has a large following on social media, as well as this Saturday show at Fox News. And so what was he saying that President Trump found so important that he posted it on here? Now, you may can see that President Trump provided no commentary, just posted it. But nevertheless, he posted it for a reason. This was the opening monologue on Levin's show last night. Now, he started off, you can see it's at 11 minutes, so I'm not going to show you all of it. I won't make you have to endure that. But what he talked about was that he said, listen, this whole thinking with Iran, you can't trust Iran. They've broken every deal that's ever existed. You just can't trust them. They have, but President Trump is incredible because
that is not accurate. And considering Iran responded twice during negotiations, I think the side can't be trusted. It should be in the United States, no?
He's destroyed their military. He has destroyed their economy. He said, but there's still one leg of this triumph that you need in order to win. He said we should go after complete surrender. So he's going back to unconditional surrender.
That's what Trump has been demanding since the beginning, since even before the war started. Is basically wanted Iran to completely surrender to him. And you can think of all that's happened, especially Trump's tantrum when this is all Trump's tantrum when Iran didn't roll over dead for him.
Which President Trump said in the first week or so of the war, obviously never succeeded in getting done. But he said, we haven't finished. We have to destroy their knowledge. This whole thing about it all gets down to the nuclear program. And Mark Levin says
that would require murdering a huge number of Iranian scientists and engineers, and it's a horrible thing to even propose.
Even if you get a deal, number one, you're not going to be able to trust them. Number two, you've destroyed their economy, you've destroyed their military, so he says, but you can't destroy their knowledge. So you're going to have to get rid of the regime. And then he says, how do you do that? He said, well, the first two legs were destroy the military, destroy the economy. Now he says, here's a third one.
And if you're not going to send in ground troops to destroy the regime, well, then what are you going to do? This is where I turn to more recent history and what I call the third.
Basically, the only reason I think bombs haven't flown yet is Trump is making a trip to Beijing, and he didn't want the war in full swing while he was doing that. I think things get very dangerous when Trump gets back from Beijing. It's not guaranteed because hopefully he will be warned against escalating when he's in China, but we'll see.
Third leg of victory. In addition to the historic military and economic actions, there must be steps taken to destroy the regime internally. After all, the Iranian regime has an elaborate police state, an internal security force that is armed and well-trained and is critical to the revolution. In fact, the regime has been importing militia from Iraq and elsewhere to reinforce its internal security force. So what do we do about this? We can't defeat it from the skies. We can't defeat it from the seas. We can't defeat it alone by economically choking them off.
All that is accurate.
Even though some people have suggested that. The way we have dealt with this in the past, during the Reagan administration and as part of the Reagan doctrine, as I've explained here now 3 or 4 weeks in a row, is to train and arm the people. And in Iran,
Okay, one small problem with that. To train and arm the people would take months. By the time, yeah, even assuming it succeeds, and by the time that's ready to go, the world economy will have already collapsed. Because, yeah, you're talking a month's timetable here, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. We just don't have that type of time. Your proposal is dead on arrival. We don't have time to do that.
you have millions and millions of people who are desperate to overthrow the regime, who are
Second problem is this is believing your own propaganda. It's especially since the war started, you have to assume that the majority of a solid majority of Iran is behind the Iranian regime at this point in time. So there just aren't enough in oppositions to overthrow the government, even if you did provide them weapons and funding.
courageous, tens of thousands who have died. What other proof do they have to provide?
Well, yeah. How about some actual evidence about what's real? Because there's nothing real about that. That's just something that you wish were true. That there's literally millions of people in Iran just waiting for you to come and give them weapons. We have seen the rally around the flag dynamic kick in like everybody knew that it would. Anybody who's paying any attention.
That's the reason regime change has never been accomplished by bombing campaign alone, is because it creates a rally around the flag effect in any area that's bombed. It's a hatred towards the ones dropping destructive instruments of death on you. No one wants to side with them. And so without a ground force, even sending in weapons, it won't work. It needs to be, you need to have boots on the ground to have any chance of overthrowing the Iranian regime, and probably about 1 million, because it's a mountainous country of 93 million.
Dynamic kick in like everybody knew that it would. Anybody who's paying any attention. And even these people, and we've had many on our show who were against the regime, are actually for it now because you have attacked their country writ large. And the idea that now then, more than 2 months into this, you want to go in and arm them, and so that they can be your ground force against their country and for the United States, the attacking United States and Israel. I mean, that is irrational to the highest degree. Well, that's not all President Trump put on there. Let me show you a couple of other things. Let me roll down here a little bit. Yeah, that weird stuff with the pool again. Then he has a lot of personal stuff that he likes to put on there, but this is weird too. When he talk about that, here's a couple of things I want to point out there. Iran's Navy. He loves to talk about this. I've sent them all to the bottom of the sea. So the whole
Iran's Navy is in tunnels, buried underground, where Trump's bombs can't reach them. They have like 3,200 small crafts, insane amount in those tunnels, and we got 6 of them. We bombed 6 of them on one day. Maybe we bombed a few on another day. We haven't bombed many.
Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the sea. And then some more personal stuff. And then this one here. And then he has an AI-generated image of himself. This is not reposted from someone else. This is his. And he shows him there in the combat zone in the Persian Gulf, destroying Iranian speedboats as they perched on the bridge with a commander right next to a gun. So it's very brave, very dramatic, and very much nonsensical. But that's where his mind is, and that's what I'm trying to see. Well, where is the Iranian mind? Because they also have a viewpoint on this. And here is the national security spokesman. This is all this morning. Trump's best course is to surrender. So you see a hardening of the view on the Iranian side. He says, as of today.
So you see why we're in trouble here. Trump wants complete surrender from Iran, and meanwhile, the Iranian view is hardening, and they want Trump to surrender to Iran. Both sides basically want the other to surrender to them. That is two sides that are as far as possible from each other for negotiations. This conflict in Iran is not ending soon.
Our restraint is over. Any aggression against our vessels will be met with a heavy and decisive Iranian response against American vessels and bases. The clock is ticking against the American interest. It is to their benefit not to act foolishly and sink themselves deeper into a quagmire they have fallen into. There was another member of parliament who also this morning says Iran has dragged the American and Israel into a maddening quagmire. You tried to open up the Strait of Hormuz and got slapped. The world must accept that it is facing a global power that will not yield to any pressure. The era of dictating terms is over. We will not surrender. So now then you have this issue to where the Iranian side is saying, no more. We're done with that. We've endured everything that you had. We still have control of the Strait of Hormuz. And that's the key thing here. Whatever President Trump is saying, whatever Mark Levin is saying, whether it's Lindsey Graham or General Keane or General Kellogg, Mike Pompeo.
Apparently, they've moved out their submarines into the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a while on this channel, but yes, they have like a bunch of diesel submarines that are ultra quiet, made specifically to operate in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. And we haven't heard much about them so far in this war. I hadn't heard about them being destroyed, but yeah. When Iran still has a fleet of submarines, how can Trump, with any credibility, say we destroyed their navy?
I saw him having more nonsense yesterday. They keep talking like we're in the driver's seat. If we were in the driver's seat, why is the Strait of Hormuz still closed? What does that tell you? That tells you that Iran is in control and we can't take it out. So we're trying everything we've tried. We tried, bombardment, 40 days of bombardment. We've tried international isolation. We've tried to destroy their economy. We've tried to do everything. Nothing has worked. And now then, here's the response to Trump's talk about the Navy yesterday.
Oh, these are their little submarines. They may have. Today they surfaced their submarines in the Strait of Hormuz, took pictures, for propaganda purposes and to show they still have them. And yep. Oh, here he's talked about it too.
Yesterday, Iranian Navy has announced the deployment of its submarines to the Strait, and they have surfaced and took pictures to say, "Hey, we're in the Strait now. And if you're thinking you're going to come and get us, you're going to take us out." Then you've got to understand there is a danger here. So they're saying now, they basically laid down a gauntlet. Are you going to test us now? Because we're ready to fire back. We're not giving up. We're not surrendering. We're going to get the terms we're looking for, or that strait is going to stay closed, and we're going to stay in charge of it. So we've got to find out who is going to blink and what path are we going to go down. Now, listen, if this was just a kind of a neutral situation.
No one is going to blink for a while. I still see there's two paths. The escalation path, which is a disaster, and let's hope it doesn't happen. The other path, by late summer, the world is in so much economic pain, they get together, the rest of the world, and they force Trump to capitulate to Iran. That's still my most likely outcome, barring escalation.
You had a standoff at OK Corral, and you got both sides staring each other down and ready to draw. It could go on potentially forever, but there's a clock that's ticking. And one that President Trump doesn't like, and one that is definitely antithetical to our interest if it continues.
And we're now over 2 months into this closure of Strait of Hormuz. Now, the damage is hitting. It's going to just, every week from now on, gas prices are going to eke upwards. The pain is going to increase, going into summer, increasing during the summer.
Continues to tick. Let me just bring this up here real quick and show you the one I'm talking about. It's just, this is a professor from Johns Hopkins, Steve Hanke, who was talking about the upcoming shortage of oil inventories. And this is a huge issue. We simply cannot continue going on with the strait closed, losing 12 to 14 million barrels of oil per day on the global market. And we're doing it by drawing down on strategic petroleum reserves all around the world. And so we're flooding the market with oil from these reserves to try to mitigate against that. And that has had some success so far. But as Professor Hanke says, don't count on that lasting much longer.
Even in the United States, by the end of July, if this keeps up, we'll run out of inventory. Right now, We're drawing down inventory. That's, shall we say, kind of cushioning the blow, so to speak. But when the oil inventories run out, then you have a real shortage, and the price will really spike.
And see, that's the whole issue right there. A lot of this is
mid to late summer. That's the point of where the real pain hits.
Artificially kept down right now. President Trump is great at manipulating the markets. I've been showing you all how that's going on. Somebody's making billions of dollars. On the one hand, that's illegal by itself. But just on the other hand, to calm the public service, they're showing people, hey, you know what? Everything's fine. It's a little hot, but it's no big deal. It's going to be going down soon. That's what he wants. But until he gets that strait open, that's not possible because we are rapidly drawing down even our strategic petroleum reserves. And when that happens, then you won't have anything to balance off the loss from the Persian Gulf, and the price will spike, whether you want it to or not. It's a global commodity. It's not anything. He can't control the physical price of it. And when there is a physical shortfall, that's the key. There simply won't be enough gas and oil and products and fertilizer and helium and aluminum. There won't be enough of it to go around. And in fact, some of those there already isn't enough. There's already significant damage already caused. But pretty soon, the facade is going to come off too. So what is going to happen? Now, we know for sure there's a lot of people that are begging Trump to go back to the military. Well, let's try that. Maybe that'll work again. You see, Mark Levin, let's put people...
What would it accomplish? Bombing alone won't cause regime change. It won't cause Iran to capitulate. So what will it accomplish? The Strait of Hormuz, it'll be just like the first month and a half of the war, where missiles fly back and forth, and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, with no prospects of opening. And except this time, it's likely they'll go more after oil infrastructure on both sides. And so at that point, Strait of Hormuz stops mattering as much because there won't be any oil export, even if it opens.
In there, let's arm them. Let's let that be a boots on the ground. That is a fantasy. That won't work. It will not work. You may sponsor, because I'm sure like the MEK, for example, they would probably love to have weapons and they could probably start something, but they're a small scale. So it'll be periphery. There's like over, I think the army itself is over 1 million in Iran, but now then it's swelled up to several million for people who have been mobilized or volunteered to come and serve. So whatever the MEK is, whatever this small group, whether it's Kurds or somebody else, and I doubt you'll get even that, it's a tiny little drop in the bucket, like everything else we've tried. It won't work. So we still keep circling back. The only thing that has any prospect of avoiding the worst.
You know, they were floating the idea of arming the Kurds at one point to try to go in and basically invade Iran and take it over and regime change. That didn't work. But why do you think they were proposing arming the Kurds instead of the Iran people? It's because Iran people, CIA analysts said, well, there's absolutely no hope of that. And so arming the Kurds was the better alternative. And even that failed. So when U.S. military planners already judged that it wasn't possible to arm the people of Iran to overthrow the regime, why is that being proposed again now?
The outcomes is the walk-away theory.
The answer is desperation, by the way.
But you see, President Trump is not setting himself up for that. He's still talking like he can go in with a hammer and finally just, bury that nail in the wood. Only it's not going to work. We tried the hammer, and it didn't work. It backfired. And if you go in and try it again, all you're going to do is get more people killed and deepen the cost profoundly.
Yep.
I don't think we should assume that the Iranians are...
It's what Asmongold wants.
Here, that they won't attack our ships with torpedoes. They haven't even tried that yet. Or swarm tactics. They haven't tried that either. Or that they'll hit the...
Swarm tactics. We've had destroyers try to go through the Strait of Hormuz, and apparently they made brief trips through and back. But against swarm, again, Iran has thousands of those small boats. You send hundreds, like a wave of several hundreds against a destroyer, and some of them will get close enough to sink the destroyer. U.S. destroyers are very powerful, but they cannot handle hundreds of small boats attacking in, endlessly. Yeah, it's overwhelmed. It's huge cost on the Iranian side too, but the small boats, in terms of life, but in terms of military equipment, small boats aren't worth a fraction of what a destroyer is. And they can have all these small boats hidden in caves in this area and along the entire coast.
The oil infrastructure of our allies, more on our bases, more on Israel, cause harm to everybody we say we care about. That's what happens if we don't do the walk-away theory. Any other version will harm the entire global economy, and of course that means ours, along with it, and all of our allies. Everybody that we love is going to get harmed if we keep going down this path. That's where we are right now, folks. We'll continue if there's any breaking news, if the Iran returns anything later today, or if President Trump makes any more statements or anything happens, you can count on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We'll be right there for you. I don't try to talk you into buying gold or...
I don't think gold is a bad investment. What's it at right now? Still like 4,700? Yep, 4,700. 4,700. About the same. Yeah, I think it's a good place to buy if you're thinking about it. If you don't feel confident, you could always average in, buy a little now, and hope it goes down lower and buy some more. Anyway,
to the southern Iran, but that's expected. There's going to be constant reconnaissance being done. Also, what's funny, before we go into the Iran things, Taiwan's parliament just came in 3 minutes ago. Taiwan's parliament approved extra defense spending of $25 billion, which reportedly fell short of U.S. expectations. One official telling Reuters, quote, "It was disappointing."
defense spending, that's $25 billion being paid to U.S. defense contractors, basically, to U.S. companies, the U.S. military-industrial complex. It's one reason how we keep the dollar going, our economy going, is all these friendly nations around the world make billions and billions and billions of purchases of U.S. military equipment.
In that there was some stuff left on the cutting room floor that we believe still needs to be funded. Like, they spent $25 billion. Like, they still should have spent more.
Still not enough. Not enough, man.
Yeah, this is money that's supposed to be given to us, the United States. This were military spending, like on domestic weapon systems, that we would not be as interested in that. We want them to spend it on our weapons.
The United States is worse than the mafia. Boy, we charge the VIG we charge is excessive.
All right, so the developments, which I'm struggling to make sense of them. They caught me by surprise because, so I was doing a live interview and I get a report from Al Mayadeen and Al Jazeera, according to citing Iranian officials, that Iran's response to the U.S. proposal. So we know that U.S. sent proposal to Iran, I think yesterday, Iran or 2 days ago. Iran responded. 1, ending the war across the entire region, including Lebanon, and that's a red line.
Yep.
2, full lifting of U.S. sanctions. Doesn't link it to, so stay with me.
Yep.
Return of frozen Iranian funds, of all of them. Continued Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz. And nuclear program negotiations later.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's complete opposite ends from what Trump's demands are.
according to this source, Iran is like, you know what? We want sanctions lifted and money unfrozen before we discuss the nuclear program. Then
A commentator the other day made a very interesting and important point, is that what the United States is asking for are things that cannot be undone. And like, for example, if Iran hands over its nuclear material to the United States, but that can't be done. Iran can't undo it later, but it has no power to do that. So, for example, if the United States, on its part of the bargain, lifts sanctions, Iran gives nuclear material, and then the United States say, okay, so you know what? We're putting the sanctions back. And they put the sanctions back. Well, Iran can say, okay, I'm taking our nuclear. No, they can't do that. We have their nuclear material. And, like stopping, like limits on the ballistic missiles, stuff like the stuff we're asking for. And Iran has reason not to trust U.S. When they did the deal with Obama, the nuclear deal, they abided to their side. And in exchange for that, they were supposed to get sanction relief. Trump came into office, tore up the deal, and didn't give them sanction relief. So they honored the agreement, and we didn't honor our end. And so that is one of the huge difficulties in these negotiations, is Iran doesn't trust. They want sanctions lifted. But they want them lifted permanently. And how do they accomplish that? Because, Trump might change his mind in like 3 months after making a deal. Say, make up some excuse. Oh, Iran hasn't done this one thing we want, or makes another demand of Iran. And if they don't listen to that new demand, he puts sanctions back on. So that's why Iran doesn't want to hand over its nuclear material to the United States, no matter what, even if they were willing to. It's just what they're getting in exchange for that, they don't have confidence that the U.S. would deliver it. If, for 100% certain, sanctions were lifted and with no way to put them back on, Iran, yes, I think would turn over its nuclear material. But it knows from past experience and the way Trump has behaved, like balling them 2 times during negotiations, that they can't trust the United States to do that. So the best we can hope for is Iran transferring its nuclear material to another country like Russia, and then if the United States reimposes sanctions, Russia returns the nuclear material. That is the best I think we can hope for in terms of negotiating with Iran, but that's not what Trump wants. Trump wants complete surrender. He's assured Netanyahu that no compromise on the uranium.
Minutes later, literally less than 5 minutes later, 2 to 3 minutes later, I got a report from the Wall Street Journal. So I don't know which one was first. Actually, no, about half an hour later. I just got it a bit late. Wall Street Journal replies, Iran has sent a multi-page response to the US peace proposals. The gaps remain wide. But these are the demands. Iran proposes ending the war and gradually reopening the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for the US lifting its blockade. Willing to suspend uranium enrichment for a shorter period than 20 years that the US proposed. Rejects dismantling nuclear facilities entirely. So entire dismantlement they reject. Offers to dilute some highly enriched uranium and transfer the rest to a third country, but only with guarantees it will be returned if talks fail or if the US exits the deal. Shows you the lack of trust there.
You see?
Iran.
Yeah, that's what it wants. It's not going to hand it over to the United States because it knows the United States can't be trusted, that they didn't honor the last nuclear deal.
Also demands a full lifting of sanctions, return of frozen funds, and continued Iranian control of the strait. A ceasefire in Lebanon is a red line. Negotiations will continue via written exchange mediated by Pakistan. So according to the Wall Street Journal, Iran was willing to concede on the nuclear program, but according to the Iranian sources, the nuclear program will be discussed later.
Right.
So I was very lost. And then lastly, afterwards, I'm trying to figure out who's saying the truth or it's all part of the game, the negotiating game. And lastly, Tasnim News reports the following, that according to Tasnim News, the Wall Street Journal's reporting on Iran's proposed negotiations text is largely inaccurate, particularly regarding nuclear materials. The source states that Iran's proposal centers on an immediate end to the war, guarantees against future aggression, the lifting of U.S. sanctions, and an end to hostilities on all fronts. Iran has also stressed Iranian management of the Strait of Hormuz contingent on U.S. commitments, the immediate lifting of the maritime blockade upon signing the agreement, the removal of OFAC sanctions on oil sales within 30 days, and the release of all frozen Iranian assets, all. So essentially, they're saying the nuclear program concessions that the Wall Street Journal is talking about are not accurate. Who to believe?
Iran is more accurate than the United States, but the whole so-called
Trump administration is more desperate, is under much more pressure to fib in how the negotiations are going. I mean, you have Trump claiming he's won the war currently, so he has to maintain that facade. And so, yeah, I wouldn't trust 100% the Iranians either, but I would trust them more than the U.S. at this point in time.
negotiation over Iran's nuclear weapons program or non-nuclear weapons program or enrichment of uranium, that's all just an excuse. That's not the issue. Go back and remember that in 1980, when the United States, the CIA, encouraged Saddam Hussein to launch the war on Iran. And the CIA's role back then was getting the various Gulf Arabs to pony money up to support Saddam's war effort. And then under Reagan, the CIA's role evolved into providing precursor chemicals for chemical weapons, biological materials for biological weapons, money, as well as intelligence on where to attack Iran, what its weaknesses were. My point is, Iran wasn't working on a nuclear weapon back then. Iran wasn't enriching uranium back then. But the United States still wanted Iran dead. Jump ahead, 46 years later. The United States still wants Iran dead. The United States does not recognize.
It's about the oil also. It's also Iran has huge oil deposits, and the United States wants to control that oil. Just like Venezuela want to control that oil. It's the only places that have nations that have huge oil reserves that currently are not basically controlled by the United States are Iran and Russia. That's everywhere else. Countries are under U.S. influence.
The Islamic Republic of Iran as a legitimate government. So all this back and forth and exchanging, this is all kabuki theater. That's all it is. This is nothing more than entertainment for the press. It's not real. What really is going on right now, I believe, is when you saw Foreign Minister Arakshi in St. Petersburg 2 weeks ago, Monday, and Vladimir Putin comes out and talked about the security architecture of the Gulf. A week later, Arakshi is in Beijing, meeting with Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister. What does he say? He talks about the security architecture in the Gulf. Now, that's not a casual choice of words. That phrase, security architecture, refers to changing the existing architecture, which means the existing structure and design is predicated upon the United States having military bases in the Gulf Arab countries for the express purpose of attacking Iran. quote, they're to defend those Gulf Arabs from the nasty.
Let's look at this. U.S. military bases, all right here, all along the coast of Iran. He's exactly right. What are the purpose of all these bases? All these air bases. They're all to target Iran to go after their oil.
The Iranians who haven't attacked them once in 46 years until now, but nonetheless, put up the pretense, we've got to protect these Gulf Arabs, the Saudis and then the Qataris and the Kuwaitis and the Bahrainis and the Emiratis. We've got to protect them because that Iran is a vicious, aggressive country. A bold-faced lie. Iran hasn't been out attacking its neighbors. Just the opposite. Its neighbors were attacking it. So you jump ahead now, and here's the United States that launches what? A war of it.
Only nation in the Middle East that is attacking others and trying to annex their territory is Israel right now.
A war of Russian decapitation. And so what Russia and China are proposing, booting the United States out, having security agreements with the Saudis, with the Qataris, those are the two principal countries that are going to drive this. Everybody else is sort of tags along because between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, you got the countries that provide the bulk of the critical assets, whether it's oil or urea or sulfur or helium. In fact, Qatar is number 2 in the world for helium production.
Yep.
So what Russia...
Number 1 is Russia, and Russia is slowing its exports of helium because it's making more fiber optic wires for drones. So helium is a big problem worldwide.
And China are put together a new security architecture. That's why you haven't seen, I believe, Iran retaliating more aggressively against these U.S. provocations over the last week. Because I think they've been asked by China, keep your powder dry. We're working on this diplomatic angle on the side. And we saw some movements towards that this last week when the Saudis told the United States, hey, you're not using our air bases anymore for Project Freedom. That's done. Kuwait did the same thing. The reason, one of the motives for that, I believe, was China.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about China, a report just came out now as well. 2-3 minutes before we started our interview, Trump is expected to press Xi. So they're meeting on Wednesday. Trump arrives on Wednesday. They're meeting on Thursday. Trump is expected to press Xi over China's relationship with Iran during the summit next week, including Chinese oil.
With what leverage?
Purchases that provide revenue to Iran and concerns about a potential Chinese weapon exports to Iran, according to Bloomberg, citing senior U.S. officials. So it seems that Trump is going to be pressuring Iran for the money they send. Pressuring China, Xi, for the money they send, the oil they buy from Iran, and the potential weapons they could be delivering.
How? Explain to me how Trump is going to pressure. What cards does Trump have? What leverage does Trump have?
Yeah, I can understand Larry's anger here is when, it's just like Asmongold saying, just bomb Iran. What is that going to accomplish? What's the objective? It's not going to make them concede, surrender. It's not going to make the Strait open to bomb them. It's not going to secure the nuclear material to bomb them. What does it accomplish? What? It just makes you feel good that you're bombing them, and even though the world is dying because of the closure of Strait of Hormuz. Same here. How does Trump pressure China?
Yeah. Did you pull up my article from sonar21.com that I posted last night? And look at the picture. I used an AI engine to generate this. I think
Can you pull it up?
I think the picture summarizes. If you haven't seen it, I think you'll enjoy it. Top agenda. That's Trump.
So that's the picture.
Trump is going.
Let's look at that again. Sorry.
This one popped up top. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
See that picture?
Yeah. Is it for the audience here?
Yeah. That's Trump. He is going begging. What is it that the United States makes that China needs? And the answer is nothing.
Nothing.
China.
Huge country like the United States. Huge country. Huge manufacturing powerhouse. It's right next to Russia, which has most natural resources in the world, and it's an ally. It can get any resource it wants. It controls the world's rare earth materials. Oil, it might be the only thing that pressure point, but it has Iran and Russia, so we can't even pressure them there. What can we do? Whereas they control the rare earths that we desperately need, and the huge impact on world manufactured goods through their factories. No, we have no leverage.
Or reverse that. What is it that the United States makes that China needs? Nothing. What is it that China makes that the United States needs? Well, you got a bunch of rare earth minerals.
Well, China needs eventually will need the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. So if Trump keeps that blockade, eventually, after 5 months, I think it was, it'll start to impact China. So despite them building alternative energy, they're still dependent on it for the foreseeable future.
Actually, right now, Chinese flagships are not being stopped by the United States.
But they can. So that's a leverage if he starts to close them.
They can if they want to get into a world war. United States has no cards here. This blockade, if it continues, all it is going to further damage the United.
We're only going after Iranian flagships or not ships maybe of other nations like India, but we're not touching Chinese ships that are coming with oil from Iran to China.
United States and its economy. China, and I wrote about this extensively in that article that's there, explains China has been, they've recognized this as a vulnerability, and they've moved away. They've been developing a strategy to go with this. They can survive about a year. If it stays just like it is, everything shut down, they can go along for a year and probably longer, because they are expanding their oil purchases from Russia now, as well as they began moving immediately to start purchasing oil from from Brazil and from other countries around the world. But at the same time, they're shifting their demand within the country from oil-based products to electric. And the electric is powered by uranium and coal and hydroelectric and solar.
I somewhat agree. There would be an impact if Strait of Hormuz remains closed for not more than another 6 months. It would start to impact China and slow its growth. It wouldn't be catastrophic, but it would impact it.
So, China's actually quite ready to deal with this. It's the United States that isn't.
Let me read the other two parts of the article. The two leaders are also expected to discuss
What
AI.
China really doesn't want is the oil infrastructure of the Gulf to be damaged, because then if the oil infrastructure in the Gulf is damaged, that's equivalent of the Strait of Hormuz being closed for the next 3 years, because 3 years is the minimum to start getting this stuff back online, and some of it will take 5 years. So it doesn't have a reserves way to deal with that shutdown of that length. So as long as it's not escalation in terms of striking oil infrastructure, China has a lot of patience.
Agriculture and energy issues, along with continued talks on creating a framework to regulate trade exchanges between the two superpowers. Taiwan's also expected to come up during the meetings, though no major changes in U.S. policy towards Taiwan are anticipated. There's another interesting article today from the New York Times talking about Russia and China.
Sure.
Turns out there's more than one way to Iran. That's my team being smart. Russia is shipping drone components and everyday goods to Iran via the Caspian Sea, surprise, surprise, bypassing both the U.S. naval blockade and the Hormuz closure entirely, per U.S. officials. Two things drove this. Ukraine kept hitting Russian ships in the Black Sea, pushing Moscow to the Caspian. Then the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports closed off the Hormuz for good. Iran lost 60% of its drone arsenal in the war. The Caspian is how it rebuilds. One expert calls it geopolitical black hole. The U.S. has no naval blockade presence in the Caspian.
Yeah, the reason it has no naval presence is this is a closed body of water. We have lots of ships with the strongest navy in the world, but that navy can't sail into here. So this is Russia's territory. Russia owns this waterway. Maybe Iran too a little bit, but this is under Russian control. And we can't stop whatever they want to bring into Iran through this sea.
Caspian, and they can't have one, obviously. So everyone knows it. So essentially, Iran's military machine can go on for a very long time. First, they have a lot more munitions, but also Russia, with their capabilities to manufacture so many drones, can keep supplying them with components, and China could supply them through Russia. Might take longer than going through the Strait of Hormuz, but they could do it.
Well, they're going through Pakistan. Chinese ships go to Karachi and I forget the other name of the deep water port that's there on the southern coast of Pakistan.
I think Pakistan won't deliver their military equipment. They'll be careful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, they will. I mean, that's why Pakistan opened up 7 new land routes from Pakistan into Iran last week. So,
yeah, but you think they'll deliver like a defense system? Trump will just lose it on Pakistan. They're trying to be on his good side. They'll probably go through.
No. Okay. Why do you think China's trying to be on the U.S. good side? Do you have
Pakistan.
Okay, what's your evidence for that?
Asim Munir, he nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, if I remember correctly.
Well, everyone doesn't want to be on the U.S. bad side if they can avoid it. Question is, Iran can't do anything to avoid it. It's already, and countries have other priorities though. Pakistan is right next to Iran, and they have a shared Shia population. It can't go against Iran. Really, it would be extremely unpopular. It would endanger the government in Pakistan to declare war against Iran. So it's much more in the, and it's an ally of China, which is an ally of Iran, and Pakistan is hugely dependent on China. So it's more on the Iran side.
And he gave him credit for ending the Pakistan-India war when Modi's like, no, it wasn't Trump, and Trump was pissed off about it. So I think Pakistan, and plus they're an indebted country, so they can't make enemies with anyone. They need China. They're close to China, just to be clear. They're very close to China.
Yes.
And then also they have the...
Yes. India and Pakistan are always fighting over this Kashmir area up here. And basically, they nearly came to a war, I think, last year. And Pakistan gets its military equipment from China. India gets military equipment from Russia. And both of them can't afford to lose... both of them rely on those superpowers for their weapons. They can't afford to lose access. Pakistan can't afford to lose access to Chinese weapons, or it would be at a crippling disadvantage against India.
Domestic issues. Asim Munir, because I covered this extensively with Imran Khan. Asim Munir is having the domestic issues with Imran Khan, etc. So him getting close to Trump makes him very popular domestically. So there's reasons to be close to Trump. And that's why, obviously, I could be wrong. I'd be for, like, why would China use Pakistan anyway for air defense systems if they could do it through Russia?
Well, they don't have to. I mean, the air defense systems don't have to go over land. China's flown them in directly. They fly in Chinese transport aircraft that are, like the sea.
Yeah, that is another angle to all this that I'm curious about, but I don't really want the answer because that means escalation. But how much has Iran's air defense improved during this now 3-4 week ceasefire? They've had a lot of time to beef it up.
Comparable to what the C-5A is or the C-17. So, China, the point is the United States does not have control over the entirety of Iran's eastern border. So the entire eastern border is wide open. Tashkent, Pakistan, and the air routes are...
And there are rail routes from China directly to Iran via Pakistan. It's... Yeah. There's no danger. We can't do anything about that. This is the other side of the world from us. Our focus of influence is Israel and these proxy states in the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, that have all our air bases. But if you look at U.S. military facilities, that shows you exactly where our influence is. Our military bases here. We don't have any. We don't have any, really, so we're in trouble.
There's also the railroad. Let's not forget the railroad that ties in. So, this is, the United States doesn't have any strong cards to play here at all.
I want to go back to the two cards that I think the US has. As you know, I'm in your camp. I think China has a lot more leverage over the US, especially after the outcome of this war, and I've said this many times. But to look at the other side, obviously the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the energy, which you've responded to. And the other one is, from an economic perspective, the American consumer. Mm-hmm. Now, I had an economist on the show. You might know him. Chris, I'll let you know his name. You might know him. He's
Chris Martinson?
He's been around. Yes. Okay, Chris Martinson was a show earlier. Yeah. And I mentioned that point to him. Mario,
Chris does good work.
He's a great guy. And and he said, Mario, true, but what the American consumer really gives the Chinese is American dollars. And the Chinese, American dollars are good, but to an extent, when the economy, when you're in wartime, for example, currency starts to matter a lot less, and hard assets are what matters. Energy is the most important thing. But what the US depends on from China is rare earths, and rare earths are significantly more important than the dollar. But if I go back to the economist that you didn't like when we talked about him last time, he's in the belief, and there's a few other economists that believe that as well, is that China's economy is not in a good place either. They're facing a lot of difficulties.
They've been saying that for years.
The real estate market is facing issues. I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert there.
Yeah.
And I know they've been talking about cracks in the Chinese since I was a kid, about the Chinese economy and the growth being unsustainable. And yet here we are. Yes. But the debt being high, the state debt, the various states or the provinces having a lot of debt, spending a lot of money on it.
The country that has a brewing financial problem is the United States with the shadow banking system. That's something I eventually need to do another video on. It is a real problem, and it's accelerating because of the Iran war and the impact on the economy. And I think it's going to really explode next year.
On infrastructure, all the buildings that are empty. So all this talk about the economy, the cracks within the Chinese economy, and the worry that he said is that if the Chinese economy needs the U.S. consumer, and the U.S. consumer slows down, stops buying Chinese products because of sanctions, then the Chinese economy is a threat, and the CCP itself is a threat because then people rise up and protest, and that's what scares the CCP the most.
Yeah, he's living in a fantasy land. Look up right now. What is China's debt to GDP ratio? Check your AI engine on that. See what it says. I suspect, what is it, like 60, 65%?
Let me get now.
China has a lot less debt, and I think his AI like mind fucks him at this time. Sometimes AI give bad answers.
It is. Oh, it's more. Hold on. No way. 300%. Total debt ratio. No, it's debt to GDP. China's total debt to GDP ratio, including corporate, household, and government debt, surpassed 300% by early 2025. No. Let me get you the.
That can't be right.
Yeah.
I'll
get you now.
My point
You
is.
continue speaking while I get it.
Yeah, my point is that starting about 3 years ago, with a special military operation in Russia, going against Ukraine, and the ensuing sanctions that were put on Russia, that was in February of 2023.
Correct. Yeah, debt to GDP ratio for China officially is 85 to 95%.
Okay.
But if it includes local government hidden debt, which I told you, there's the provinces having issues, and broader economy-wide debt, some estimates push total debt much higher to 300%. But no, the national debt is 85 to 95.
Okay.
The U.S. national debt is 120 to 125.
Right, exactly. So the United States, number one, is the worst position debt-wise. The United States needs China to keep buying our debt, our treasury bills, which it is not. China has been unloading it. We've been ordered by the government to start getting rid of U.S. debt. They're buying instead gold. They're moving. So they are moving away from the U.S. system. Now, also, again, 3 years ago, in the aftermath of that summit meeting in Moscow between Xi and Putin in January 2023, February 2023, they made a decision, China, that they were going to diversify who they're buying from and who they sell to. And so they've actually developed more of a domestic demand for products like you would in a middle-class country, which they are. They're an advanced middle-class country.
They are.
But the reason I was laughing when you started talking about, oh boy, the Chinese economy, that's really in trouble. It's going to die any minute now. I've been part of a weekly discussion group with a lot of, some Chinese experts and some people who are Wall Street people, and they've been saying that for 3 years.
This is a good image. The United States, 90% of GDP, and United States 120% of GDP in terms of gross public debt. So China has less debt than the United States.
Years. Yeah. Any day now.
Yeah, longer.
Day now, boy. China, it's on the edge. Meanwhile,
since early 2000s, Larry. Since early 2000s has been said.
Yeah. So as we talked, I think last time, back in 2000, China didn't have a single bank in the top 10 of the banks worldwide. Japan did. Japan had 5 of the top banks. Now, China has the top 4 positions, the 4 largest banks in the world. That's number one. Number 2, its industrial capacity surpasses anything that the United States and all of the G7 countries combined cannot match. That it is secured control of chains of supply of critical goods that are needed in order. As well as its electrical production. One of the things with this whole future of AI is dependent upon an enormous volume of electricity generation, which the United States does not have, which China has. I mean, when you look at the chart, it's like the United States is down here and China's up here. It's off the screen. So the notion that Trump brings anything of any strength to this conversation is just laughable. China does not need the United States anymore, and yet the Western. I know I've read a lot of these guys, the Atlantic Council, and they all believe that there's no way that this relationship between China and Russia can't go on. I mean, China's too big, Russia's too small. China doesn't want to be dependent on Russia. No, China really wants to come be part of the United States. Nonsense. It's abject nonsense. But the West continues to indulge this ridiculous fantasy. And like that economist you referred to the other day, he's part of that camp.
No, there's many. So first, electricity production in China is now double what it is in the U.S.
Yeah.
9,500 to 10,000 terawatts per year versus 4,500 to 5,000 for the U.S. terawatts per year. Wow.
They have, 3.5 times our population? Makes sense that they need more electricity.
And despite the claims, I was reading another claim that, China needs the NVIDIA chip because the Chinese chip makers, they're too stupid to make good chips. Well, really, look at what they're doing with Huawei. DeepSeek has come out and has surpassed. They're in an advanced generation of DeepSeek, their own AI engine that did not cost anywhere near what all these other ones in the West are costing. So again, it is China. The West refuses to accept the fact.
Problem is, you can train one AI model off another, and it's far cheaper. And that's apparently what China did, and it's smart of them to have done it. You allow your AI engine to be publicly used, then anyone can train their own AI off it.
That China has gone from being in a subservient relationship, just like a parent with a child, that now it's a fully grown adult. It's making more money than the parent, and it is
Crazy.
Independent.
Electricity production. So China's 10,000, the US is 5,000, India's third at 2,000, Russia's 1,200, Japan is at 1,000, Germany's at 600.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Germany
they shut down all their nuclear power plants.
Yeah. But they're still, so on the Chinese debt, so there is worries about their debt. So if you consider corporate debt, it goes up to 300% to GDP, which is about the same
Well,
as the US.
okay. Well, let's do that with the U.S. too. If they're going to, well, look,
250, yeah, 250 to 300. Both of them 300. So the Chinese debt, including corporate debt, according to Grok, no, this according to ChatGPT, both of them is at 300% if you include government, corporate, and household.
Yeah.
That is the worry.
Yeah. So the difference is China actually has hard assets. China has industrial capability. The United States does not.
The US?
Yeah, Mario uses AI. I much prefer images. Top power producing countries. That up there, you see that? That's China. Way up there. Russia 1.2, Japan 1, India 2K. Entire EU together is a little bit more than India. And AI depends on power. And look who has lots of power.
So the US is energy independent, sorry. It still imports a bit of crude oil. China still depends on imports, the majority of its energy. So yes, China has rare earths, but thanks to...
And unfortunately, we in the United States do too. The type of oil we produce is not the same as the one we use. So we get oil out of the ground, we ship that abroad, and we import type of oil we need, which is the heavier stuff. And so we are an oil importer, and we have to buy that heavy stuff on the international market at international prices. And so our gas prices are going up.
To geometry, the US has energy. So there is still some leverage. Like it's not a lost cause for the US.
Well,
Actually, some advantage.
That's a little oversold too, because look at what's happening. The United States is actually it has to import a particular type, a heavier oil, because it doesn't have that. It has some of the lighter oil, number one. But its existing stocks, like of West Texas Intermediate, they're being snapped up like crazy by people overseas. So the United States is actually beginning to run a deficit, a shortage, because we've drawn down the strategic reserve. So this is the United States doesn't quite enjoy the advantages that it claims with independence on this front, because we got fat and lazy, to be candid.
True, that was true. But yeah, China and the US, like honestly, geology played. Actually, the US has geology to its advantage. China had to build its rare earth refining capacity. It's not like China had more rare earth underground than all other countries. Many other countries have a significant amount of rare earth.
It's the process.
Because other countries, exactly, the processing. Other countries didn't want to process it. The biggest processor of rare earth, I think, in the 70s or 80s was the US.
Yeah,
and then it exported it to China.
U.S. very dependent on heavy crude oil imports. And look at this. This one doesn't. It's not. It only goes up to 2016. But you can see Saudi Arabia 28%. The rest of the world. We import oil from the Gulf, and we import a lot of oil in general. So we're going to get hit by this closure of Strait of Hormuz.
Where I live in Florida, there's a mining company just about 35 miles north of me, and the tailings, there's a gypsum mine, and so the tailings that come out of that, if you go through those tailings, it's got all the rare earths in it, but they have to be processed in order to get them. And there's the problem, because the processing is technically very difficult and potentially very dirty in terms of a pollution standpoint. So China's been willing to indulge that, to deal with that aspect, where the U.S. hasn't. But now the U.S. is caught, because it has to go to China and say,
okay,
hey,
I just found a graph that perfectly illustrates the situation for the United States. See, a long time ago, like 2009 to 2013, we had no oil exports. All the oil we produced in the United States we used, and we had oil exports. And we had oil imports. We had to import everything. But you see how it goes down? That's the shale boom. That's fracking. And as fracking increased, we started producing more and more oil until eventually we started exporting. and that is the shit. So we still import. We still, all along, even now, we still import a huge amount of oil, except we export oil too. So normally it cancels each other out, but the type of oil we import, we need, is the oil that's missing because of the closure of Strait of Hormuz. We don't have the refiners to refine the light crude that's being produced by fracking. And there's no way to fix that in the short term. So we're going to get screwed by the closure of Strait of Hormuz. Not as bad as countries that are right next to it, like Japan, but we're still going to get screwed pretty badly.
Mr. Xi Jinping, could we get these 4 or 5 different kinds of rare earth minerals that we need now? Because we got to build these weapons that we plan to use against you in the future. I see China goes, yeah. Let me give you those.
I mean, U.S. when we manufactured 2/3 of the world's goods, when we were the China of the world, the industrial powerhouse, we refined rare earths. We were the biggest refiners of rare earth. We gave all that out. We outsourced it to China. We outsourced rare earths to refining to China, and now we're screwed because of it. That's why you don't outsource your industrial base. That's like giving up your prosperity. Military is tied to your industrial base. And if you export it, you're screwed.
Material so you can be prepared to kill us. Are you kidding me?
I was just talking to a military analyst before first time she comes on the show, and I'm talking about how the US, China's just sitting back and letting the US deplete its own munitions. And then if she said to me, Mario, if China decides to make a move on Taiwan now, which she doesn't think they will, they're planning to, and I agree, it's not it's plausible but unlikely. But if they decide to do this, the US just militarily may not have the munitions to be able to repel it. And to stockpile those munitions, they'll need the rare earth that comes out of China, the aggressor they want to fight. It's like, hey, China, please give us, as you said, give us rare earth so we can bomb you as you attack Taiwan. What a bad place to be in for the US. It's sad. It's sad.
Well, I mean, I've been sort of troubled by it. That I love the concept of America as a place where the government has limited power over the people, that's changed, where you are free to pursue your dream, and through entrepreneurial instinct you can succeed. You're not going to be held down because of what you look like or what class or caste you come out of. That it's not important that you have a particular pedigree in your background. That concept of America, I think, is what I've always believed in. Unfortunately, we've abandoned that dream in many aspects. But that said, the number one serial murderer in the world is the United States. You got 750 bases, military bases. Why do you need a military base? You need a military base because you're going to launch military operations from that base against foreigners. Look at all the military bases China has. That would be like 2. Same with Russia.
Always my counterpoint when someone says that, because it's a valid point. And I think we've had this discussion. A loved one says that to me sometimes because they've been impacted by U.S. aggression.
Yeah.
And I tell them, look, I criticize it as much as anyone. But the alternative may not be better. It may even be worse. And if you go back in history, like in World War II...
No, it won't be worse, because right now those military bases are being used to prop up the dollar, to prop up a decade-old Ponzi scheme that is called the U.S. dollar. And to do that, we need to keep a huge part of the world dollarized. And you do that by basically destroying nations, so that they don't have their own functioning currency and are forced to use the dollar. Like Iraq uses the U.S. dollar, for example. All the countries that we've regime changed around here. Same with Africa. I don't keep track of Africa as much because it's not... there's nothing as crucial as the oil from here. And this is where I'm focusing now. But yeah, everywhere. We have those military bases so we can keep the rest of the world weak and divided and reliant on the U.S. dollar. I'm talking about the third world, really. And through our bases in Europe, and we can attack Russia. It's all about projecting power to maintain our hegemony.
Japanese did, the atrocity that everyone talks about what the Nazis did, which is horrible, but look what the Japanese did to people in China and Korea. Insane level of torture, like indescribable. I was watching a video about it.
Yeah.
They did live experiments on people cutting them up. They used to, apparently, genuine reports, not just fabricated conspiracies, of them throwing babies and catching them with a bayonet, and just crazy things that you don't see American soldiers do that. So my worry is that the alternative...
You don't see official uniformed U.S. soldiers doing that. The CIA, the black side of the United States, the dark side, the side that funded ISIS. Those guys are as sick as they come. I mean, genocide of Christians, we Mossad and CIA were the ones training, arming them, and whatever. It's not an accident that those turns into monsters. Every one of our, let's say, terrorist proxy groups, like the Azov Brigade in Ukraine, they're monsters. The Contras during Iran-Contra in Nicaragua, absolute. Oh, they did everything as worse as you can get. The official military, yes, it's pretty clean and pretty proper. Not like maybe like the actions of the IDF as another uniformed military that has problems, but the United States doesn't really have that level of issues. But the dark side of the CIA that works with terrorist organizations, it's as black as they come.
This discussion with you, I had with someone else. The alternative could be worse. And then the counterpoint when I said that, they're like, yes, Mario, but with the amount of death that we're seeing right now, death and destruction, shouldn't we at least test the alternative? And we were talking about the alternative being a multipolar world. And I've given him examples of how historically, during multipolar worlds, it didn't really always lead to peace. It led to more wars and atrocities. He's like, yes, but that doesn't mean it may not lead to more peace this time around. So yeah, I don't know. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's
above my pay grade to solve these problems, Larry.
I prefer the term as Chaz Friedman. I credit him with this multinodal, because multipolar, poles are, it's a line, two ends. Multinodal is really what we're looking at, and that the world has changed. But the reality is, the United States has launched unprovoked war after unprovoked war after unprovoked war. Going back, let's start with Vietnam. So you can make the case that the war in Korea, that may have been partially provoked.
Can you just on Vietnam before we move on to Korea? Can you say how destructive was Vietnam? The napalm bombs were just atrocious.
For the people of Vietnam, it was terribly destructive. Yeah. I think at least 1 million were killed. The Americans, it was like every year in the United States, or at least a while back, we'd have 58,000 people killed in traffic accidents in a year. That's how many we lost in Vietnam over like 15 years. People get all emotional about, our losses. We suffered. That's why we keep doing these wars. It doesn't really cost us anything, not significant casualties, because we can't stand.
Still a lot. It's still a lot. Like you're comparing out at around 8. It's a lot. But like if you compare obviously to the number of Vietnam in million, it's hard to imagine those numbers.
Well, look at the
difference is traffic accidents. That's practically unavoidable. It's just the cost of every country has them. It's just like cancer. We lose a lot of people to cancer too, but Vietnam, that number there was entirely avoidable. So it's not the same as traffic accidents.
Casualties that were inflicted on the killed in action in Iran by the U.S.-backed war that Iraq launched, that was 200,000 dead. And that was in 8 years. The 58,000 died over about 20-year period. So it's just, like I said, the scale of death is much smaller. But the United States, it does not need these bases. It does not bring peace. Yeah. And in fact, John Kiriakou, I think you've talked to, as John reported back when he was doing a study of trying to stop the heroin poppies being grown in Afghanistan, he learned CIA had actually encouraged it because they wanted to poison with drugs Iran and
no, it was to keep the flow of drugs to the United States going. If you have 96% of the world's poppies being grown in Afghanistan, then any heroin reaching the United States is most likely coming from Afghanistan too. And it's global. I mean, Afghanistan's location doesn't matter anymore if you have 96% of the production there. Everywhere that receives heroin is basically receiving it from Afghanistan. And so why we were letting or encouraging Afghan to grow poppies is because we wanted that heroin to flow into the United States so the dollars smuggled, when you have drugs coming in the United States because of anti-money laundering laws and because it's illegal, the cash from sales of those drugs has to be smuggled out of the country. And that dollarizes the world. That's why we need the flow of drugs into the United States to continue. Otherwise, our currency collapses. Isn't that a wonderful place to be as a country? Depending on a continuous flow of drugs, illegal drugs into your country, or your currency collapses.
Russia. So that I said
I remember the poppy trade during the Afghanistan war. You mean?
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, another friend of mine, Bobby Charles. Bobby was the Assistant Secretary for International Narcotics and Legal Affairs at State. So INL was the name of that bureau, and he was at a White House principals meeting. So Colin Powell was Secretary of State, and then Bobby was with him. So it was principal plus one, they call it. And in that meeting, Bobby was presenting through Powell the need for the United States to shut down all this heroin production. And and Bush initially went along with it, and then Rumsfeld and Cheney interjected. Oh no, we can't do that because they wanted to keep the
Romney and Cheney are as deep state as they come. They are Cheney is the one who declared deficits don't matter right before the United States started its operations to dollarize the world. Seriously, it's like Iran-Contra, the Contras destroying government there and fighting communism throughout Latin America. And Cheney, right before that, declares deficits don't matter anymore. The United States run record deficits, prints money to fund those deficits, and the money flows out of the country all over Latin America and South America because of drug trafficking. That CIA, we know, CIA planes were flying into the United States with cocaine. And what's not as widely known is they were flying out of the country with millions of dollars cash, billions overall in cash, dollarizing South America. And yeah, that's the world we live in. That's the dark side. The ESF, Exchange Stabilization Fund, heart of the deep state. That's the network it runs, the system it runs to keep the dollar afloat. Now fentanyl has become part of that mix, and they've given up on heroin. So they let the Taliban take back over. And also, apparently, I'm pretty sure they're using Somali fraud to dollarize the world too.
The poisoning of Iran and Russia going on. So that's what I'm talking about.
Which one is that? Sorry, I was just looking at that. So I thought Bobby, I knew it's Larry Wilkinson. I knew who was the chief of staff.
He was chief of staff.
Yeah.
Colin Powell. Yeah. Bobby Charles was the assistant secretary of state for international narcotics and legal affairs. INL.
What did he say exactly? Sorry, I missed it because I was looking at Larry's name.
Yeah, no. All he said was that they brought up the proposal that
yes, maybe since we completely controlled Afghanistan. Oh, I need to show you the graph of this. There we go. So that's what happens to poppy farming in Afghanistan after we take over in 2001. It explodes. We basically completely control the country. Oh, and why it drops here is because the Taliban, they forbid the bombing of poppies. And, of course, so we had to take over from them and make sure Afghans continues to produce poppies. The insanity. Everyone, any heroinist anywhere in the world, practically, we grew the poppies that made the heroin that killed those people. The United States owned Afghanistan. We could have. It's easy to shut down production of a crop. You can fly in planes tell farmers not to do it, first of all, instead of encouraging them to grow poppies. Second of all, anyone who disagrees, you just use planes to poison their crops. I mean, look, the Taliban managed to eradicate poppy production in 1 year. We could have done the same, but no. Because the entire purpose of us invading Afghanistan was to make sure the poppy production, the heroin production, resumed.
Powell was presenting was what Bobby's office had come up with, which was how to shut down the heroin production in Afghanistan, and it was overruled by even though Bush said, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea." And then Cheney and Dom Roosevelt said, "Oh hell no, we're not going to do that."
Yeah.
We've had some depraved.
That makes me wonder how much Bush Jr. knows about what's really going on, if he thought it was a good idea or two. Bush Sr., he was deep into all this. He was head of the CIA. That's why he was deep into all this. But his son, I think maybe Bush Sr. just put Rumsfeld and Cheney around him and had them do the dirty stuff and make the dirty decisions like letting Afghanistan produce tons of heroin.
Leaders in the United States, unfortunately, and they've fed into the horror that's been inflicted upon people around the world: Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. It's just
there was a report I was reading by I can't remember who it was, but there was a report done. I was on an interview with the executive director of Human Rights Watch today and a few days ago again. And he told me about a report, and I looked it up. It's a report that claims that millions of people died because of the sanctions that the U.S. places on countries.
They do, because critical medicine can't reach a country. All other tiny ways, healthy food. Anyway, I think this is a perfect place to stop. They've covered what's going on with regard to Iran, and we've wandered off to some other topics too, in terms of the wonderful stuff the United States does around the world. This will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.